This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. You're working on your book, but you're probably not doing it the right way. And you're probably not doing it with the right resources and the right strategy and the right nothing. But you're in luck because I have Michele Chynoweth, your book done right. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here.
So you are in the book business, but unlike a lot of people that are in the book business, you are also a highly successful author yourself. Tell me a little bit about your professional journey and some interesting stops along the way that brought you to the work that you're doing today.
I've wanted to be a writer ever since I was 10 years old. Wanted to be an author, in fact, and have a book published. And I actually wrote a little book when I was 10 and never saw the light of day. And then life happened. I graduated from college. I became a news reporter. So writing's always been part of my career. I was a print news reporter. I was on air with a TV station. And then I wanted to be more creative with my writing. So I went into marketing and I became an advertising account exec. And then I owned my own ad agency. And I was very creative with my writing. I worked with artists in the advertising marketing world. And then that author dream resurfaced along the way. And I sat down to write my first book. And it actually won first place fiction prize with the Maryland Writers Association fiction contest. The prize was literary agency representation, but 9/11 happened and the literary agency was in New York and we didn't get the prize. So I was in a pretty down place with all of that. And I was driving along and I remember hearing a still small voice say, "You should write a modern day novel based on the book of Job." And it wouldn't let go. And I was going through a lot of Job-like stuff, divorce and my business, kind of fumbling a little bit with the recession and just struggling, and it wouldn't let go. So I wrote that book and it became my first novel, The Faithful One. And that was published. And then I started writing along this genre of contemporary suspense based on Bible stories. And I started to speak to women's groups, church groups, Rotary clubs, you name it. I was invited to speak. And I realized my books didn't just help me get, my message out and help me through, in a therapeutical way, I guess, but it helped other people. My messages helped other people. In that speaking, that led to teaching on the college level, how to write a book. And that led to coaching. I realized I needed to pay it forward to other writers who asked me, how did you become a best-selling author? And that led to my book coaching career.
Now, I know everyone is dying to know, and I'm channeling our listeners, what was the topic of the book that you wrote back when you were 10?
Oh, it was about a news reporter and a destined yet doomed love affair. And they say, write what you know, write what you're passionate about. And I extracted a memoir from that, which is still to come.
How about that? Do you still have the original manuscript or handwritten notes from that book back when you were 10?
Oh, yes.
Wow. How about that? So funny. Well, so let's fast forward to today. I'm going to hazard a guess that 98.7% of everyone listening to this episode right now either wants to have a book, is working on their first book, or is working on their next book. And they've never had any sort of formal training in how to write a book. And they just figure, well, I have this story inside me, or I want to write a book about my expertise if I'm a consultant or speaker or coach. And they just start writing. They just go to Microsoft Word, they go to File, New, and they start typing. I'm guessing this is not the best way to write a book of any kind. Talk about some of the mistakes that your clients, when they first come to you, or even the prospects that are out there that you're talking to that's saying, hey, Michele, I'd love to write a book. I'm starting my book. I have my book in a closet for 3 years. never able to finish it. It's in raw format. At any stage or phase of the book writing process, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen?
A lot of writers come to me after they've been either dreaming about writing a book for years or just got started or got stuck. And I'm talking 5 years, 10 years that just never get it done. One of the biggest mistakes I see is that they don't have a plan. So, yes, they sit down at a keyboard and they type some sentences and they think this is going to just come out of me. And then they falter and it falls apart. Writers aren't born, they're made. We're not born with a novel in us that comes out on the page perfectly. We have to learn the craft. And that's where I step in and help these writers with a proven process and a step-by-step guide that holds their hand and helps them along the way. So first they need to know, I have a 7-step process, the purpose of their book. So why are they writing it? And they need to keep their readers in mind. The next step is who. I'm a reporter, so I answer the main questions of who, what, when, where, why, and how. Right. So the why is important, their purpose for the book, and then the who are they writing for? And then they need a plan, the how. They need to schedule writing time. They need to be held accountable, which most people don't hold themselves accountable. They need a coach. Then they need to know the what. What are they writing? The plot, the table of contents. They need an outline. Writers talk about whether they're plotters or pantsers. Pantsers are the ones that just like write along the way, but they get lost and then they lose their readers. So they need an outline. I'm a big encourager of that. And last but not least, they need powerful style. They need to know sentence structure, what point of view means. They can't, again, lose the reader or confuse the reader, because once you do, that's like a cardinal sin with writers. You never get them back. And then last but not least, they need polishing or editing. They need to know a publishing path that they want to take. And we're not born knowing that either. You know, we learn from experience. And that's what I try to lend, my experience. I've been down all the publishing paths and I discuss each one with my students. And then it's never too soon to market your book. So I teach how to promote your book, publicity, and platform.
I love what you just said, plotters versus pantsers. I'm guessing pantsers means they're flying by the seat of their pants, correct?
Correct. It's not a good way to go because you usually go off the path. And all good books should have a main message and a main storyline or a main plot or a main, if it's fiction or with nonfiction, a main content and a main theme. And if you sit down and just let it fly, you're going to veer off that path and, again, lose your reader.
Do you think this is more challenging or less challenging if you're working with an author who is a fiction writer and is telling a compelling story and kind of weaving the characters and the plot and so forth versus a nonfiction book? Is that more of a straight path? I mean, that still has to be planned out, but how do you work with a fiction author differently than with a nonfiction author?
It's funny you asked that because actually they're a lot the same, and nonfiction writers tend to look at their book as a how-to book or a self-help book or an experience book, and they're very dry. What they need are anecdotes and stories, just like fiction. And I lend that to my students who are writing nonfiction, that they need to have a signature story too. Why are people reading this book? Because they care about the author or the message or the story that you have to tell. And I'll give an example. One of my students wrote, "Divorce is Worse Than Death." And that was the title. He had originally a book about how divorce is worse than death with custody and legal battles and finances and, all of those topics. But it was very dry. And I said, you need to put story in there. And he had surveyed people that had been through divorces and he put their stories in there. And that's how readers connect. with story. They have to feel the story, they have to care. So once he got those stories in there, including his own about his parents' divorce, that's what made it compelling and readable and made readers turn the pages. So fiction, of course, is a story, and you have to have character arc and a message, a main message. So actually, I bring that out because all books need to be readable and compelling.
Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. And I think there may have been some disservice done to the writing community. There's all these books and quotes mainly about writing, from Stephen King and Mark Twain. And, I just sit down and I write 8 hours a day. And if you're not writing 8 hours a day, you're not a writer. Talk a little bit about sort of time blocking and maybe some of those mantras that, you have to write every single day to be a writer. What's really going on there?
Well, there is no such thing as writer's block, I believe. We hear that all the time. I have writer's block because of COVID, or because, I don't feel it, or I'm not good enough. I hear all of that as a book coach.
Sure.
I sat through a workshop by John Grisham, and it was very powerful because he said, I really don't have writer's block because I have that plan, that outline where I start the day, and I ask myself, what happens next? What happens next to this character? And then he's off to the races. And I write that way too, where you need to find your most powerful writing time. For me, that's in the morning, same as John Grisham, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Because once you let all those distractions in, email, cell phones, what have you, kids, parents, once you let those distractions in, you veer off course. So you just need to schedule time like you're scheduling a doctor's appointment. You don't let in your cell phone and emails for that. So for me, it's several hours, though. I can't just sit down for a half hour and write because I get into it. So whatever the case may be. And I've had actually a writer in my class break down in tears because she said, you freed me, because I told her, you don't have to write every day to be a writer. You write when you can. Make sure you schedule that writing time. But it doesn't make you any less if you can only write Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but make sure you commit to that. So have a plan. I've also sat through classes with Jack Canfield, author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he says, in his book, The Success Principles, chunk it down. So you have an annual goal, then you chunk it down to a quarterly goal, monthly goal, weekly goal, daily goal. And once you have that plan, stick to it.
I love that. You also mentioned kind of the complexities or the subtleties of the different various publishing options. This is both harder than it used to be and much, much easier than it used to be. So there's traditional publishing, there's self-publishing or independent publishing, there's hybrid publishing, there's entrepreneurial publishing. How do you help your clients navigate the best option for them? And then what are some of the factors as far as control or speed to market or distribution, or what are some of the macro issues or macro questions that you like to ask your authors about their goals so that they pick the right publishing option that will get them to those goals?
Just like speaking or marketing or any business, really, everything's a factor of time and money usually. So you have to look at various publishing paths along those lines. How much time do you have? If you were in your 90s and you want to get it done this year, then you might choose self-publishing. If you're in your 20s and you are just starting out and you want to go for a traditional publisher and try HarperCollins or Simon & Schuster, and you have to get a literary agent these days to go with the big five. They don't just come and find you. Nobody's discovered anymore. You just can't send your book out there and hope you get discovered. That's not reality today. But I always tell my students, if you can, shoot high, shoot for a traditional publisher if you have the time. And that doesn't go anywhere. There is no stigma anymore to self-publishing. It's, first of all, 100% free to do it yourself. However, I always say there's a caveat to that. If you don't know what you're doing, then you need help. You can't just put a bad book out there because you never get a second chance to make a first impression. They have templates and so forth, but most writers are good at writing, but they're not good at the rest. And that's okay. You just need help to walk through that self-publishing, and I can help with that.
So tell us a little bit about sort of like the day to day. A lot of people think that this is some monumental task because they, like you said, they've worked on it the wrong way for possibly years. Then they might hire you, come into one of your programs, and they realize that there is a method to the madness. There is a key to the vault. There are some ways that you can accelerate their speed and shorten their path to publishing success. What are some of the things that people are afraid of that they really shouldn't be afraid of? And what are some big obstacles that maybe are surprising to people? They go, oh, I didn't realize that part was going to be hard. And maybe they thought, for example, writing the book was hard. And then they realize, oh, wait a second, that was a piece of cake compared to marketing the book. So what are some surprises that you help your clients navigate through?
You're right. Many writers do write their book, and then they sit there and say, hey, how come this isn't selling? A lot of writers are afraid of the marketing end of things. Those dreaded words, publicity, platform, promotions, they don't really have a clue, or they think they do, but then their books just fall flat and get 1 or 2 reviews. So most writers do need help with that. There's a lot of help out there. I have been 30 years in marketing, so I add extra value to my coaching clients with my marketing expertise. But there are proven ways, and I've been down that road. So like I said, I like to pay it forward. There are ways to build reviews. There are ways to market your book. Public speaking is the number one way. So fortunately for your speaking audience, they already have a leg up. They already have a step forward because most of them have a platform. So that's a great thing. And then there are other common sense things, websites, social media. I can't tell you how many writers say, oh, I don't feel like going on social media. Well, do you want your books to sell? You need to do it all. And the other thing that I stress is editing and proofreading, and not just giving it to your mother or your sister or brother or son or daughter, but getting a professional editor. Because, like I said, you don't get that second chance to make that first impression. It needs to be great. Readers, once they read your book, if it's not good, they won't come back again for your second book, that's for sure. Or they might close the book and never finish it. It needs to be professionally edited. I can't stress that enough. I never edit my own books. I would never do that. I have professional editors edit my books. So editing and marketing are super important.
This editing piece, I got to tell you a quick story. I did some self-published books 20 years ago. Horrendous, just horrendous for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons, and maybe the main reason they were horrendous, is unlike what you just said, Michele, I thought I could just edit my own work. I'm a great writer. I was an English major in college. This book needs to be in my voice. Then I had the following experience back in 2012 and 2013 with the Do It Marketing book. I got partnered through the publisher. I got partnered with a fantastic developmental editor. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I approached our first meeting with a lot of trepidation. This guy's going to mess up my book. He's not going to understand my voice. He's not going to understand all of my subtle nuance and background and experience. First meeting, literally first meeting, it was about an hour. And I was like, the clouds parted. The sun sort of, kind of the beams came down. You could hear the angels singing. I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This guy is going to make my book a whole lot better. He totally gets my voice. He totally gets my intention. He totally understands my blind spots, things like sequencing, where a story would be needed, where we need some connective tissue. Hey, David, there needs to be a transition between over here and over there, because now you're taking people over here. The part that comes after doesn't make sense if we don't tie things together. So the analogy that I now tell people is, let's say you spent your entire life cutting your own hair. And you say, no, only I know how to cut my hair. And then you sit down with a professional, highly skilled hairdresser. The hairdresser is not going to make you look worse. The only thing the hairdresser is going to do, which is their professional responsibility, it's their job description, is to make you look better. So now I will never, ever, ever put anything out in book form that has not been professionally edited. I've come 180 degrees to the other side. So the folks listening, I love what Michele said. Cannot stress this enough. And I back you up 1,000%. A good writer needs a great editor. And a great writer also needs a great editor. I would say even a fantastic world-class writer. And by the way, all of them are edited. No one's like, no, I'm fill in the blank famous author. No one edits me. Sure they do. But they're your partner. They're not your teacher. They're not your boss. They're not your servant. They are your partner. And if you look at it that way, the end result of your book is going to be 10 times better. And again, I'm like a converted addict, right? Where it's like, no, everyone needs to be in recovery. I used to be the non-editing, no one can edit as good as me. Totally false, total nonsense, total ego. And the 2 books I have out now are 10 times better because they were professionally edited. Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Let's talk about the marketing, because another insight that I've had, and you've written a lot more books than I have, and you have a lot more experience with this. I found that when I was launching a book and even marketing the book long-term, which is a marathon, I realized everything that I was doing to market the book was everything that I should have been doing all along to market myself. Talk about that marketing of the author versus the marketing of the book and how that flows together with a lot of your clients.
You do need to put yourself out there and brand yourself. You need a website. Like I said, readers connect to authors. And then once they do, they'll read the books you put out there. But the greats, Stephen King, John Grisham in the fiction world, in the nonfiction world, Jack Canfield is a good example. If you think about their books, they're in a genre and they're branded, and you connect with the author and you have expectations of that author and the author fulfills them. That's why you need to brand yourself and put yourself out there as an author. And for the speakers and entrepreneurs listening, books help them brand their expertise, make them an authority, connect better with their listeners and their audience. That's why it's super important for those that are thinking about doing a book that they actually get a book out there. And that's one more connection they make as that expert and authority. But yes, they're not only buying their book, they're buying into you, and they'll come back for more.
Right. I love that. Talk a little bit specifically about the entrepreneur, the financial advisor, the consultant, the coach, the professional service provider who puts their expertise in a book. What I found, I'd love your take on this. What I found is that writing the book has helped me crystallize some of my thought leadership, that once you go through the rigor and the discipline, assuming that you have a coach and a partner to help you, once you go through the rigor and the discipline of capturing your ideas on paper, it's almost like capturing lightning in a bottle, where you say, oh, so this is my methodology. These are my stories. These are my examples. These are my points that I want to make. The book then can lead to, I can do a keynote speech based on the book. I can launch an online course based on the ideas and the methodology and the training that's in the book. I can now start doing coaching and consulting based around the ideas in my book. How does that source material, when people come to you, And they say, well, Michele, I've been speaking for 10 years, but now I'm writing a book. They've got keynotes, they've got trainings, they've got seminars, maybe they have video recordings or webinar recordings. How do you help them corral some of that source material and organize it into a really well-written book, the right kind of book?
Well, again, I tap into what their main message is, their signature story, their focus, and their passion. They say, write what you know and write what you read and write what you care about, write what you love. And all of that is inside you. And that's what your speakers and entrepreneurs are putting out there on their platform. So I tap into that again through your purpose, your plan, and then your plot, your table of contents, what you're writing. And then I coach them with the craft, the how-to. So don't worry about the how-to. Tap into what you want to say and what your readers need, what your audience needs. How can you help people? I like to quote Deepak Chopra. He said, everybody's given a special gift or talent. And if we match that with a need out there, that's going to create that spark that, first of all, if you're helping other people, is your goal. And second, automatically creates affluence. So if you match that talent with that need, your message with your audience and reader, you're going to touch people, you're going to connect. And then you may have a second or third book in you, but get that first book out. A lot of writers say they have various books in them. Oh, I want to try this and that. I'm like, no, you focus on that main message. And then, yes, there may be more to come.
Michele, tell me a little bit about how book coaching actually works. Give me kind of the nitty-gritty of it.
A lot of wannabe authors, writers, think they can take a workshop or go to a conference or even take a webinar or masterclass. But then they're still left flailing in their writing and they don't get done. That's why I decided to offer an 8-week course that actually guides them through the process and helps them on a one-on-one basis back and forth. I actually review their work, critique their work, edit their work. I give them writing prompts. They actually are guided through that writing process, including after they get their writing on the page, me reviewing it and going back and forth so that they can take that next step, write that next chapter, and get their books done.
Awesome. Really, really great. Wow. Well, I know that you have some gifts and some links and some resources. This was so tremendously valuable. I know that people want to get connected and stay connected to more Michele brilliance. Where can we send people? What links can we drop that they can get more of you?
They can find me on my website, michellechynoweth.com, where they can download a free how-to guide on getting started on their book. It's step 1 of my 8-week course. They can email me at michelle@michellechynoweth.com, and I will send them a recommended reading guide for writers with books on writing, editing, publishing, marketing. They can also connect with me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. They can find all the links at the end of this podcast. I'm very approachable and I love hearing from you. And I will be happy to also set up a 30-minute how-to discovery call.
Awesome. Fantastic. And all those links will be directly under this episode at thespeakingshow.com. You'll get Michele's links, the goodies, the social media links, the email to request the special goodie, and all kinds of other cool things directly under this episode. Stop the car, stop jogging, pull in the dog from wherever you got going on, pop over to thespeakingshow.com directly under this episode. All the links, all the goodies waiting for you right there. Michele, thank you for being with us. This was tremendously valuable, and I appreciate your expertise helping so many authors and speakers and consultants get their work out there in print in the big world.
Thank you, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.